Lizzie Halliday, the serial killer America almost forgot about, or at least we wanted to. The story of Lizzie Halliday's killings were national news in the end of the 19th century. With many newspapers picking up the story, it's safe to say all of America was horrified that somebody could commit such awful crimes. While she was only convicted of one murder, it's clear now, over 100 years later, that Lizzie was guilty of multiple. This is her story. Halliday, who was originally named Eliza Margaret McNally, was born in 1859 in Antrim, Ireland. Her family moved to the United States when she was a young child. When Halliday reached 20 years old in 1879, she married a man from Greenwich, New York. This man was known by his alias Charles Hopkins. His real name was Ketzpool Brown. This is where things start to get interesting and quite suspicious. Lizzie's new husband Charles would only live for 2 years after marriage. It is rumored that they had a son, who would live to be institutionalized for mental health. Lizzie wasted no time, and got remarried the same year to another man named Artemus Brewer. I'm not able to find much information about Lizzie's new husband because he died less than a year into their marriage. Lizzie seems to be experiencing a run of bad luck with her husbands dropping like flies. Lizzie married again in short order to a man named Hiram Parkinson. Hiram seemingly saw the writing on the wall and left Lizzie within the first year of marriage. He left alive, best I can tell. Smart decision by him. Lizzie, back at it again, married a man named George Smith. George had previously served in the armed forces with Lizzie's second husband, Brewer. Fortunately, George made it out alive. It was discovered that Lizzie had tried to poison his tea with arsenic. When the attempts were discovered, she fled to Vermont. She took another husband shortly after, Charles Plaisdell, but Lizzie vanished only 2 weeks after marriage. Years later, in 1888, Lizzie, now going by the name Maggie Hopkins, showed up at a saloon in Philadelphia. The saloon was owned by the McQuillans, friends of her family from back in Ireland. Maggie, aka Lizzie, set up her own shop in Philadelphia. Maybe she was thinking about turning her life around. Unfortunately, her shop burned to the ground, and it was found that Lizzie herself had done it to collect the insurance money. She was convicted and sentenced to 2 years in Philadelphia Eastern State Penitentiary. Upon her release in 1889, Lizzie Brown, which she was now going by, got employed as a housekeeper for a man named Paul Halliday. Halliday was a 70-year-old farmer living in Burlingame, New York. He had been widowed twice before and lived with his sons. Sounds like a match made in heaven, right? Finally someone who can relate to Lizzie's bad luck. Within 2 years of being married to Lizzie, Paul Halliday's house and barn were burned to the ground. Lizzie was a suspect of the arson. Around the same time, Lizzie stole a team of horses and drove them to Newburgh, New York, and sold them there. She was not convicted of this crime under the grounds of insanity. Unfortunately, the fire that burned down the Hallidays' house also took the life of Paul's handicapped son, John. Lizzie stated that John died trying to save her from the fire, but it was later found out that his bedroom door was locked, and back in these days, doors could only be locked and unlocked using a key. It was quite a coincidence that Lizzie happened to have the only key to the bedroom when she was questioned about the fire. Lizzie was arrested and sent to an asylum. Shortly after her arrival, the asylum stated that Lizzie was cured and she was released. Lizzie must have been very convincing and manipulative to get away with this many obvious crimes. After the asylum decided that Lizzie was a model citizen and set her loose on the world, she returned to Paul Halliday. Unfortunately for him. Not surprisingly, Paul went missing shortly after Lizzie returned home. Her story was that he was out of town doing masonry work. Neighbors didn't believe her story. A search warrant was obtained that revealed two women, Sarah and Margaret McQuillan, the Irish friends that owned the saloon in Philadelphia. They were found buried in the hay in the new barn. They had both been shot. Lizzie was questioned about the murders, but reportedly acted erratic and incoherent. She was held in Sullivan County Jail in Monticello, New York, to await her trial for the murders. While she was housed in the jail, she refused food and attacked a sheriff's wife. She set her bed on fire. Clearly, Lizzie has a thing for fire. Then she tried to kill herself multiple times. Apparently, after that, she had to be chained to the floor for the rest of her time in jail, awaiting trial. A few days after Lizzie was locked in jail, investigators investigating the murder of the McQuillans noticed a poor smell coming from under the house. Paul Halliday was discovered under the floorboards of their house, mutilated and shot. It didn't take long after a few murderous woman headlines for people to realize that Lizzie had other husbands that had died shortly into their marriages. Of course, in addition to attempted poisoning of her fourth husband, the press concluded that Lizzie could be responsible for at least 6 murders, although her involvement was never proven. One of the sheriffs in Sullivan County Jail made a statement that Lizzie could even be involved in the Jack the Ripper murders, which brought even more attention from the press, but there was no evidence to support this claim. On June 21, 1894, Lizzie was convicted of the murder of the McQuillan women. Lizzie Halliday made history by becoming the first woman sentenced to death by electrocution. It wasn't meant to be, however, because a medical examiner deemed Lizzie to be insane, and she was instead sentenced to life in a mental institution. Halliday was sent to the Mattawan State Hospital for the criminally insane, where she would spend the rest of her life. But that wasn't the end of Lizzie's murders. She became a well-behaved and trusted patient. She was given the privilege of sewing. She even made a friend with one of the nurses on staff, Nellie Wicks. Unfortunately, in 1906, Nellie decided she needed a change of scenery and decided that she was going to leave the hospital. This upset Lizzie, who responded by stabbing Nellie with sewing scissors over 200 times. On June 28, 1918, Lizzie Halliday's life of murder and arson had come to an end as she passed away from a kidney disease, Bright's disease, at the age of 59. I personally cannot believe how Lizzie was able to evade proper justice over and over again. Maybe this is a case of hindsight being 20/20, but her ability to act insane, then manipulate herself into being the teacher's pet at the asylum clearly shows that she wasn't truly insane, at least not in a way that could be rehabilitated. Then again, everyone who commits such nasty crimes is insane. She was truly an evil woman.